Well, welcome everybody. As soon as I can find how to get rid of that screen, we will be back. And I'm Boyd, that's Ryan. Thanks everybody for joining us tonight. We are going to talk all about QTune and why we started it and all sorts of things. So welcome along for the ride. And we don't really have a script. We got a little bit of an outline to follow and to keep us straight. And at any time, we're going to do a Q&A session at the end. But if there's some pressing question that you have, go ahead and leave them in the comments. Go ahead and say hi if you're following along. Hit us up in the chat. And yeah, so let's get started. And I'll introduce myself. My name is Boyd, and my last name is Timothy. So I usually don't tell anybody that because it just confuses everyone. Yeah, I know if you know me, if you call me Tim, you have no clue who I am. So it's a good way to have me filter things out. But yeah, a little bit about me. Early as I can remember, I was 5 years old when I started piano, but I've always had music going around in the house. So I've been involved with, singing choirs and whatnot. When I was in early teens, my dad and his twin brother had a computer company where they built whatever you call those things, the clones of the AT clone and the first PCs that came out. So at an early age, I got used to plugging in little circuits, little memory chips into big boards and assembling computers, and I always thought that was cool. And I went to college and got a CS computer science degree, started working in 97 at a big networking company called Novell. Got my feet wet, switched over to development. And I'm just explaining kind of my journey to get to this point. But I started an app business with a friend when the App Store launched, and we had a really, really good, successful business there. Made an exit in 2014, and have since been still working on iOS stuff. But music-wise, I've been in a bluegrass band, written some songs. We came out with an album last year, Basin and Grange, if you want to look us up. But yeah, I've really loved tinkering with electronics, building amps, microphones, whatever else. So, and then I live in Utah, and I'm married with 3 kids, and 2 of them are mostly out of the house and still have one at home. So I'm gonna pass it over to you, Ryan. Let's see, I don't know which way you are. That way.
Yeah, so my name is Ryan, and I'm a husband of 1, father of 5. I'm a mechanical engineer. That's my day job, and I'm also a musician. I play guitar and sing, and I lead music at my local church on most Sundays. I think for my, I'm a bit of an electronics nut now, but that journey, being a mechanical engineer, that wasn't really something that I did until probably about 15 years ago. I was a guitar player and I had a lot of pedals, and so I bought this Monty Allen's pedal mod kit. It was probably like $18, and it had a couple of caps, and maybe it had an LED and a resistor to change the brightness. I mean, it was really simple. And after I did it, I think maybe it changed the sound. I don't know, but man, I was hooked. That was so cool. And then over the next probably 5 years, I probably modified 20 or 25 pedals. I mean, they were all Boss because that's the kits that they had, and Boss pedals, they're not great, but if you modify them, they're better. And I didn't even care about playing the pedals. I just wanted to do the modifications. That was the fun part. So, and then from there, I kind of kept going. I started modding Fender Blues Juniors. I think I modified 3 or 4 of those things. I mean, it was just great fun. I graduated from modding stuff to building stuff. I started building pedals from, complete pedals, and and I built a couple of amps from the ground up, and then probably 4 or 5 years ago, I started to just buy the PCB and source all the parts myself, and started putting those together. And at one point, I looked down at my pedal board, and I'm like, man, all the pedals I have, I built myself, except one, and it was the tuner pedal. And so I'm like, well, I need to build myself a tuner pedal. And so I started digging into it. I got an Arduino. There's people that have done this. It turns out that there's probably a few dozen like senior design projects for electrical engineers where they have designed a guitar tuner. It's a little bit of electrical engineering. It's a little bit of programming. It's kind of a cool little project. And I found a lot of projects like that. And so I was kind of scavenging some of the code, and I was trying to build this little simple circuit, and I actually got one to work, with the Arduino, and it was so simple, and it really wasn't very good. It was noisy. It was terrible quality. It didn't have a screen. I was just looking at the node output on the monitor, the computer monitor, but it worked. And I tried to make it better. I tried to add some hardware filtering. I tried to improve the code, and I just couldn't. I just don't have the programming chops. And so at some point I kind of put it aside and put it on the back burner. So one of the other areas that I'm interested in is acoustic guitars. I'm primarily an acoustic guitarist. I play electric a little bit, but not a lot. Mainly acoustic guitars, and I kind of hang out on the acoustic guitar forum website. And a lot of guys like me, they like talking acoustic guitars and pickups. Pickups are what take your vibrations and turn it into an audio signal for other people to hear. And there's this kind of subgenre where people will take two different pickups and mix them together, called dual source guitar, dual source pickups in an acoustic guitar. And so a lot of people will take a piezo as their primary source, like an undersaddle or a soundboard transducer, and they'll mix it with something else, like a magnetic or a mic. And mic pickups need to be powered. A lot of the other pickup styles can be passive, but a mic specifically needs to be powered. And so, when you look at like a pedal, like a commercially made pedal that can do this, that can take two different pickups and mix them together and do some EQ, maybe some high pass filter, and then maybe power a microphone inside your guitar, those can get really expensive. Anywhere from $300-400 up to what I think the Felix 2 now is maybe $1,250 or $1,300. I mean, it's not a small amount, and I just couldn't afford that. So I thought, well, maybe I can make my own. And so, baby steps. I'm not going to start off designing a Felix 2, but maybe I could start off by just designing the mic preamp, and then I could mix it together some other way with like a Boss LS2 or something. And so that's what I did. I got on the internet. I don't know anything about designing circuits. I'm a mechanical engineer, not an electrical engineer. I took circuits, one course in college, circuit analysis. I know how to add resistors, in parallel and series, and that's about it. So I got on the internet, all about circuits. Big shout out to those guys. They've been a big help to me and to us. Very helpful guys. And I started learning about circuits and how to design them. And there's this guy on there called Audio Guru again, and he had this mic preamp, and that's exactly what I needed. And so I kind of stole it and modified it to my use. And after a few months and a few prototypes, I had something that worked. And I was able to put it in this tiny little box here. It's just one knob. It's just gain, but it's applying 4.5, 5 volts of power to the mic. And so now I can, my dual source guitar here. You might be able to see it, but there's a mic right inside there, and so there's a piezo under the saddle here, and then a mic, and so I can mix those two together, and using this mic preamp here, it will power it, and I can adjust the gain. And so So I did that, and it was working great. I was using it for a few months, and I thought, well, maybe I could sell these things. Maybe there's other people out there like me that wants a cheap mic preamp. So I listed it on the acoustic guitar forum, and no one bought it. And I waited, and I waited, and no one bought it. And then one day, someone hit me up and wanted to buy it, and it was Boyd. I guess I fooled somebody. So Boyd, I sold it to him for $50. And there's something wrong with it. I think I forgot like a washer or something. We were chatting back and forth a little bit, and I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry." And I sent him the washer and maybe a couple other caps for one of his other projects. And at some point, I kind of started searching around his website and looking at his band and listening to some of his music, and I realized that he was a software developer. Ding, 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 ding. I'm like, wow, okay, maybe we can do this tuner thing. So I hit him up on email, and it's like, hey man, I've got a dream. I've got a dream of making my own guitar tuner, but I can't program. I can do a lot of the other stuff. I can design the enclosure and do the artwork, and I can probably maybe do some of the electrical engineering, and I can do all that, but I can't code. And so I need some help. And I have this dream of developing a guitar tuner that I sell as a kit, and other people like me can put it together themselves. And so I talked to him about that, and he was interested. So that was it. I mean, what did you think, Boyd, when I first hit you up about that idea?
Well, yeah, I was looking for that preamp because I've got a guitar the same way. Like there's one venue where we perform, and it's just it gets loud and noisy, and hard to use mics, and so we wanted to plug in, but being a bluegrass kind of maybe snob on the sound of your instrument, like that matters a lot to me. And so I wanted my guitar to sound good. So I got one of those, K&K Trinity Pro systems with the mic and the under the bridge plate transducers. And yeah, and then I didn't want to buy some huge expensive thing like kind of like what you said. And I've got an HX stomp that I was tinkering around with, and I'm like, well, I bet I could make it. So if I get phantom power to that mic, then I could send it through the HX stomp to do some mixing, and that's exactly what I did. And that T-Pre, like, it was kind of, I don't think it was the very first DIY pedal that I had done, because I'd done an ABY thing from guitargadgets.com. I modded that up a little bit, but when I put your T-Pre together, like, I was just so impressed, like how well it was. Like, it was really tight in there, and everything fit, and like fit really well. And everything, the jacks lined up, the switch and everything, and I was like, dang, this is pretty awesome. And so when you asked me that, if I'd be interested in working on a tuner, I was like, sure. Like, I never really thought about doing one before. And you kind of mentioned that you had tinkered with Arduino, and I've fiddled with some ESP32 stuff before. I built a Bluetooth page turner with an ESP32 that we were using in the band. In fact, it's broken because it was cobbled together with so many parts. But this has kept me busy. I haven't gone back to fix it. But anyway, when you reached out, like, it sounded fun. Having started a business before and running it, I knew a few things that, at least, that I wanted if I was ever to get involved again. And this I don't know is necessarily any sort of business that we could do as a day job, but I've never really wanted to go do something on my own, per se. that I would be selling, because it's just so difficult to handle everything on your own. So I was interested in that, like, hey, there's somebody willing to work on something together. Um, Nothing to lose, and it sounds fun. So yeah, let's go for it. So
Cool.
well, in terms of kind of how we started, because I had Arduino is really cool. Um, but all the projects that I found, um, I know you can go deep in some of those Arduino projects, but ESP32s felt a little more like gnarly and like get your hands dirty type of thing. And if I can figure out how to share my screen, I'm going to switch over to another window. I'm going to show a couple of things. When we first started, we were looking around. One of the goals of the project was to find something. Can you see that, Ryan? Is that showing up on the screen? We were trying to. Oh, here's the T-Pre. I mean, look at that beauty. Look how nicely everything fits in there, nice and tight, and it works. So, but we were trying to find something that we could like buy off the shelf, and we came across this Heltec ESP32 ESP32 S3, which is what the current one actually is. And for some reason, I couldn't find one that has the screen showing, but man, I must have stared at these documentation for so long, just trying to figure out what GPIOs were available for us. But this is the screen that we started out with. And oh, look, there's the T-Pre on my board with the HX Stump. But this is how we started. And early on, Ryan was always so gracious. Like, he just had like this stockpile of parts, and he's like, oh, let me send you that. So he sent me over this, he got one of these nice breakout boards.
Yeah.
And I started coding, and we ended up, here's one of, what would you even describe this?
Frankenstein. It's a perf board prototype circuit. Go back to your pictures there. You had the original LM358 schematic.
Oh, right there.
Right there. Yeah. So that's the original circuit that I started with the Arduino. All it is a voltage divider. To put the signal, to offset the signal using the LM358 there, and a couple of caps. It's pretty simple.
Yeah. Why don't you actually explain what the purpose of that is for your project and for ours? Like, why would we even use something instead of just plugging a guitar signal straight in to a microcontroller?
Yeah, so the Arduino or the ESP32, it has a voltage range that it can read, anywhere from 0 to 3.3 volts. But when your audio signal is going to go plus 1 volt, minus 1 volt, it's an AC signal, so you have to offset that voltage, or else you'll clip the bottom of it. And so that's one of the first things you got to do is to apply some sort of offset, not only for the ESP32, but also probably for your single-sided op amps that you're using. So, I mean, in a nutshell, that's what that circuit was doing.
Yeah, and I have tried in the past. I think I probably did at some point, just to see if I could get a signal registering in the ESP32, and it just isn't strong enough. So having that preamp, this that I'm showing on the screen is one of the, we got a preamp. Actually, this is two different builds, but that back one is the one with the preamp. So you've got the input signal being fed into the ESP32. But Oh, I was going to show just a quick thing of this. Like,
Was that our first prototype? Yeah.
It was pretty crude, and it was really jumpy.
So those numbers that it's displaying are the cents. So every note, every half step has 100 cents between notes, and so if you're at plus 50 cents, then you're halfway between that note and the next note up, or minus 50 cents. So those numbers that it's showing are, how far the signal is off, and you can see it's pretty jumpy. I mean, it's jumping anywhere from 10 or 15 cents. So we still had a lot of work to do with this one right here.
And it had me worried because as I went out and did some research, so many people said that the ESP32 ADC, which is analog to digital converter, which is where we're sending the signal, was noisy and bad. And so it almost, for me at least, it kind of became like this challenge, like, yeah, I want to prove everybody wrong. But that kind of gave me motivation to keep trying to see what we could do. This was an early, like, how do we control a screen? So
yeah,
I'm just using bare wires to switch the yeah, we had all sorts of crazy circuits, and we realized like this Heltec screen, it's just really tiny, and to put that on a pedal is going to be not cool. But we came across this thing, which people call the cheap yellow display, and that'll make more sense later. But it's just one of the really popular ESP32 development boards that's available out there with an LCD.
And they call it cheap because they're what, $10, 12?
Yep. Yeah, we were really hoping that something like this would work. But it had a couple of drawbacks. One of them was it had limited space, so I actually couldn't get as much software on there. But I wonder if I even have a picture of this somewhere. The bigger problem, I'm kind of skipping around. Here's a good prototype. One of the problems is getting a really nice clean mount inside of an enclosure. And that silver stuff around the edge is the resistive touch panel reader, whatever you want to call it. It was just really difficult to get it to look nice.
And you can see the ribbon cable there up on top.
All right.
That was kind of a not so nice feature of it. And there's really, we had all sorts of ideas on how to hide it, but none of them were good. So
I wonder if I even have a picture of what I tried, but how many weeks did we spend trying to research that? It was a while.
It was a few. Oh, there's some plexiglass, yeah.
So one of the ideas, when you manufacture an LCD, you can, most of the screens that we have on our laptops, even our monitors, on our desks, they have what's called a cover glass. And the idea is to have a protection between, you and the actual LCD screen. And this is typically done by a factory when it's manufactured. And so this is my poor attempt of using some UV resin that I used to finish my guitar with and gluing a piece of plexiglass to the top of the screen. But terrible idea. Oh, look, there's a proof of concept gluing two glass panels together with the UV coating, and it seemed like it would work. But then I was trying to picture, like, how do we direct people to do this in a DIY kit and get it to come out looking professional and nice?
I'm so glad that failed because we found a better solution.
It was kind of a disaster. You want to talk about a little bit about some of our goals that we had, and then we'll introduce the screen that we're using now.
Yeah, so in the beginning, I had some pretty simple goals. I wanted it to be a great tuner that was accurate, as at least as accurate as anything else out there. Which that says a lot. There's a handful of tuners. The Turbo Tuner, Peterson, Polytune 3. I mean, they're pretty accurate, and so that was a high bar. And I wanted it to be DIY. I wanted it to be sold as a kit, which meant through the hole, not SMD, which is better, but most people can't solder that stuff, and so keeping it through hole was kind of like, well, let's just start that way and see where it goes. And then it needed a soft switch, a momentary relay. Any sort of soft switch implies you've got a relay in there switching the circuit back and forth. So those were really the only three goals I had initially. But as we went along, we came up with some other goals that you probably worked on more than me, Boyd.
Well, one of my goals, which we've already alluded to, was if we're going to do something and sell it, like for me, it's got to look nice and look professional, and that's kind of where we got directed to go where we did. But as far as snags go, like I kind of mentioned that we wanted an ESP32 development board because they're relatively inexpensive. One option that we could do is go out and design our own circuit board with an ESP32, get an external LCD, get a touch screen if we want that, and get all that working together. It would have been even more expensive for us to go that route. So one of the design challenges was to find an ESP32 development board that had everything that we needed, that we could basically buy and make it work. Well, as we jumped around to these different ESP32s, one of the big challenges was finding, let me explain that a little bit. When you buy an ESP32 development board, the whole point is that it's like a Swiss Army knife. Like, it's got built-in Wi-Fi, Bluetooth. It's got ports for lots of sensors and whatnot. And the idea is, like, you develop and prototype your thing, and then the idea is you'll go off and design your own board around an ESP32 with only the things that you need. And early on, one of the things that I wanted to have was a monitoring mode, I guess is what we ended up calling it, where when you're, normally you hit a tuner or you press the button and it will switch off the sound and it'd be muted and you're in tuning mode. And then you hit it again and you're playing and there's either a blank screen or whatever. But I always thought it would be fun to like be able to look at the frequencies and do stuff on the screen while you're playing, right? Which we'll show you later, but that meant that we would need a buffer in there and have another relay in there instead of just the one to switch the signal. And
so our simple circuit just got a lot more complicated.
And I remember you were pushing back for quite a while on the buffer, and I think originally it helped us. Like, I just could never really see us releasing that way, but I don't know what was going through what was your thought process on that?
Yeah, just simplicity. But it was the right call. And at some point, I don't even remember how it happened. I think you had a schematic and I just modded it up one Saturday and it sounded great. And so in fact, this is it right here. This This is a CYD, a cheap yellow display, and this little tag board off to the side. This was our first buffer. And so after that, I was kind of hooked. It's like, well, okay, I think we can do this. Now we just got to figure out how to get this tag board into the main circuit, which meant another relay as well, and another op amp. So our circuit got more complicated, but then it allowed us to do a lot more things. So yeah, that was a pivotal moment.
I think I ended up twisting your arm, although it didn't take too much, because when I was testing on my little pedal board, I realized like one day I like just plugged my guitar straight into my amp, and I'm like, whoa, this sounds like really bright. And I plug it back into the pedal board, and it was like kind of dead. And then I grabbed the refractor pedal from Aeon Effects that I had built up, because it's that clone, and it's got a buffer in there, and I put that at the beginning of my pedal board, and it's like, oh, hey, we might want a buffer.
Yep.
So
yeah, so good call on that one.
One of the other things that we got sidetracked with was a delay. So when we first had some of these early prototypes, we would switch the signal and we'd hear these loud pop noises. At least I would. And that was another thing that I was kind of pushed really hard. Like, if we're selling something, we need to make it so that it, works well. And one of the forum, let's see, the Discord, I'm trying to remember, it's one of the ESP32 Discord servers. There was somebody who'd done some of this before, and they recommended that we use a delay circuit, so that we would mute the signal, basically take the signal to ground, and then switch the actual relay and do it vice versa. So we probably spent a month or two kind of sidetracked on that.
Yeah, but eventually we found out that we didn't need it, because we had better. What was it that we had better? Something else.
Well, it ended up being a combination of just using some pull down resistors.
Okay, right.
Yep.
So,
which is what's in our latest circuit.
That circuit, that delay circuit, took a lot of components, so I was glad to see that go.
Yeah, it was kind of cool. It's fun to see some of this stuff work. I'm going to try sharing my screen again, if I can find it really quick. Yeah, like right here. Nope. I thought I had a thing of oh, here we go. So this is testing out the delay, and you can kind of see the signal and the delayed response. We mock this up in LT Spice to figure out how to make it work. And that blue line, you can see, like, that's where the delay gets, or that's where it gets muted, and then the relay gets set. But it was a distraction, and I'm glad we don't have to use it either. But well, eventually, after this failed experiment of doing cover glass, I can't remember. I think I was just like kind of fed up with it, and like, there's got to be something better. Like, does anybody have something that's already built that looks good that we could use? And I came across the ones that we're using now, which is made by WaveShare, where it's got a cover glass and capacitive touch already built in.
Yeah, so explain the difference between capacitive touch and resistive touch quickly. Just most people don't understand that.
Yeah, so the screen on the bottom, the cheap yellow display, is a resistive touch, and what you have on all four edges is basically like a really long resistor. And depending on how, you actually have to physically press down on that panel, and then depending on the resistance values, those get converted into coordinates of where you're pressing. And as far as accuracy goes, like they work, but it's fairly common that you have to
Calibrate.
calibrate. Thank you. You have to calibrate them, and they just generally don't work well. Like some of the old cars that you have would have resistive touch, and they're problematic. And then capacitive touch is just using, and I don't actually know, but it's using capacity from your fingertip, and which is what most smartphones have nowadays, like your iPhone or your Android phone uses a capacitive touch where you just barely have to touch it, and they don't have to be calibrated, at least these ones, and it works much better. But one of the issues is that they're a bit more expensive.
A bit.
Yeah. And so that's why, we had this cheap yellow display. And kudos to the guys on that Discord channel, because there's a huge community of people working on stuff that uses the cheap yellow display. And like any DIY forum, like they're so incredibly helpful and kind and whatnot. But we went with the we started calling, there were 4 different flavors that we were looking at, some without a capacitive touch, some with, and then this one, which this is some early experimenting trying to get it to work. We call it the expensive blue display. So if you ever see some of our documentation or whatever, we call it EBD, for expensive blue display. But I think this was the EBD4, which was a higher resolution. But yeah, trying to get that to work. We use, in the software, we use an open source library for the graphics called LVGL. And Waveshare has only made that work with version 8 of LVGL. And I had already written our stuff for LVGL 9. And so I had to go in and modify the driver to get this to even work. But this took me a while, and I was almost kind of ready to give up because it was not happening. But eventually got it working, but I'm not sure if it was really glitchy and slow, because it's pushing 4 times the amount of pixels using the same processor.
Because the resolution's so high, yeah.
Right. It looked so amazing. I was so disappointed that I finally made the decision that, like, we can't do this, because the screen looked amazing. But yeah, but just I hit all sorts of problems. But then I think this is the one that we're currently using. We call this one the EBD2 because one was the one without a screen or touch. This was the cheaper one or let's see, the 320 by 240 resolution with the capacitive touch, and then the other couple. But EBD2, I think that's what this is. But you can see my frame rate is nice up there. It's like above 60 frames per second. So it's handling everything really nicely. But that's kind of the journey to get to that point. I'll say a quick thing about the algorithm that we use. I'll bring this up on the screen. The algorithm that we're using for pitch detection is a zero crossing algorithm that we're using some open source made by how do you even say their company name? Psychfi?
I don't know.
CYCFI Research. Joel is the name of the guy that wrote it. And it's got some autocorrelation bit crossing stuff in there. And I I'll be honest, I don't fully even understand it yet, but it works amazingly well.
It's
And
specifically written for stringed instruments. I mean, because if you just took a pure sine wave, like from a sine wave generator, and put it into any simplistic auto crossings algorithm, it's going to nail it. But the waveform from a stringed instrument is extremely complicated and gnarly looking, and so yeah, there you go. You start to see how complicated it can be. It looks even worse than that. And so his algorithm is specifically made for stringed instruments, and it does all sorts of fancy things that's above my head, but it works great. It's called QLib. And in fact, that's kind of how we came up with our name. We kind of stole the Q from his Q library. And so we really appreciate Joel's allowing us to use his algorithm.
yep. And one of the things that we discovered is that it actually works better if we slam the signal going into the ESP32. And so that's when you get one of our kits and you add in the MCP 6002 op amp, its whole purpose is a couple of gain stages, and it's really like the gain is set really high on that. And we essentially we're almost turning it into a digital, on and off type of situation.
Yeah, we're clipping essentially.
Yep.
Yeah.
Um,
Clipping is never good in audio, but it's good when you don't care about the magnitude. All you care about is the frequency. And so we're just slamming the signal, making it clip, getting a nice or close to a square wave, and then it's easier for the algorithm to see that.
exactly. And I actually have hooked up I've hooked up my amp to that signal. It's actually a pretty cool sounding fuzz, minus all the extra 60 hertz noise because I didn't have it in an enclosure. But let's see. What else should I say about the software? So it's all on it. I decided to use, there's a few flavors of thing out there to write software. There's Arduino IDE, but you can't really get into the deep depths of the OS. And so I'm using ESP framework, which is a nice environment for doing ESP32 stuff. And it's an ESP32 S3, so it's nice and fast, and it has lots of memory. One of the things that I thought might be interesting, and it might be something we experiment in the future, but because of our limited number of GPIOs, which the connections into the software, we're limited on which signal does the ADC, the analog to digital conversion. And you actually can't use that and use Wi-Fi at the same time, or Bluetooth. But I always thought it might be interesting to do something with Wi-Fi, maybe do updates or be able to control it with your phone or that type of stuff. But that's not something that it has now, but it might be something to experiment with later. But yeah, ever since I looked back and those first messages with you, Ryan, were like June of last year when we were first talking about this, and
we're going on a year.
Hardware, that's one thing that's really shocked me, is like developing hardware takes so long.
Yep.
Crazy. But it's been worth it and a lot of fun. I'm just glancing through here to see if there's anything else. Oh, I have my Frankenstein board in here somewhere. What is that?
That's your that's your first concept of our clips, right?
Yep. So we were trying to figure out how we could mount the this new wave share ESP32, and we came up with some clips that are included in the kit now, where it basically holds the screen in place from going outside the enclosure. But somebody asked on the forum a couple days ago about whether this is open source project or not, and I just thought I would just mention this right off the bat. I originally thought I might do open source, but with the amount of hours that I've had to spend getting it there, I kind of feel better right now at this point keeping it not open source, so that we can really focus on making it nice and stable, and it'll give us flexibility to make quick changes as we need them, and without me having to spend more of my time supporting a big community at this point. It might be something that we do in the future, but as of right now, that's the current plan. But
okay. Well, shall we show them the real thing?
yeah, let's do a quick demo. Let's see if I can make this happen here. And if anybody has questions for us, write them in the comments and we will try to answer them. Let's see. So I need to turn this off and then switch over to Ryan. I'm not sure if your audio will, let me see if I can do this. Okay, there's the Q tune. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just going to turn around and flick my amp on. Okay, so a couple of things here. Oh, this is maybe something I could show. When we first started, we had that resistive touchscreen, and I hated it. Like, it's just cumbersome to touch a resistive touchscreen. And so I actually built in where you can press and hold and completely navigate the menu settings with just the button. So a single press will go forward, a double press will go backwards, and a long press will click the button. And for the longest time, it wasn't until maybe 2-3 weeks ago, that's how this worked.
Yeah, I'd gotten used to the double clicking and the holds and all that, and when you got the touch going, that was like amazing.
So one of the things, yeah, I'm so glad it ended up working. When you get down to the bottom, because it's so cumbersome to use this button, which, occasionally I'll still do it if I'm standing up and want to just quickly change something. When you're down inside of a menu, there's always a home button. So if I press and hold, it takes me straight back to the tuning window. So that's kind of nice. So again, you press and hold. Let me do a quick thing. I'm going to make it so my manual or the autofocus turns off on this camera. If I can figure out where it is. There we go. Does that seem in focus enough? There we go.
Yeah.
All right. Well, here's the touchscreen working. So to go into settings, you press this button, the Q button at the bottom, and in the advanced, I'm going to go ahead and turn off these utility tuners. And what that will do is it limits the ones that are just kind of standard. Those other ones you'll have to play with just to check them out. But the strobe, typical strobe, like. And I think in a gig, Ryan, this is also my favorite. I don't know if you can hear my guitar at all.
Yeah, I can hear it.
So here's something else that's interesting. Let me turn off the reverb on this amp. So if you want to hear the difference between, I wonder, let's see if this will work for a second. Okay, so if you wanted to hear the difference between buffered bypass and true bypass, I've got my Telecaster in my hand. You can actually just, and the difference is more drastic. In fact, you shouldn't really be able to hear any difference right now. So I'm going through like a 20-foot cable into the tuner, and then from there with about a 10-foot cable. But if I have this on my pedal board, true bypass just really sucks a lot of the tone out of it. But one cool thing, if you're in buffered bypass mode, then you can do, let's see, you can also turn monitoring mode on. And what that's going to do is make it so that right now I'm muted. But now I'm able to see the tuning while I'm playing. So let's switch to one of these other ones. And you know, you can come in here to the display and choose a different color. So let's choose yellow. Hopefully this will show up on the screen. Oh yeah, it looks yellow. And the idea with this one obviously is just to have a huge letter. Let's see, what else should I show? You can change the brightness. So it's either super bright or somewhere in between. You can choose what your initial screen is. So if you want, when you power this up, if you want to be in tuning mode or standby mode, I like mine where it's in tuning mode. You can change the rotation. And the way to think about this is I'm talking about where the momentary switch is. So if you want the momentary switch on the left, then you choose left, or if you want it on the right, you do it that way. Of course, upside down works like that. Which might, I don't know, do you have a pedal board that you'd want that on?
Anywhere but normal, you mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I have in the past. Currently, I don't. But yeah, there's been times where it'd been nice to be like up at the top, sideways. I'm not so sure upside down would ever be all that useful, but left and right could definitely be useful.
Yeah, I guess depending on how your tuner, your pedal board is routed. Then we've got some interesting standby screens. Of course, if you just want it to be blank, so oh, you know what? I just discovered a bug. Oh no, I didn't. I need to come in and say that I want my monitoring mode to be off. Sometimes it's hard to keep track of all these things, but there we go. So monitoring mode is off and completely blank screen. If we go to some of these other standby screens, I think, Ryan, you said, hey, didn't you have a dream about this?
You showing the big Q. The YouTube is 8 seconds from a delay, so I'm not sure exactly what you're showing right now.
Oh, shoot.
Oh, basic, I see. Yeah, basic is a big Q. Yeah.
Let's show some of these other ones. Whoops. Display. By the way, I just have to say how much of a pain it was to write a driver for this touchscreen to work with LVGL9. Oh,
kudos to you.
I was so worried.
You've gone above and beyond this project.
There have been so many things challenges we've had to deal with. You know, here's your standard little DVD logo that kind of bounces around. Everybody has to have one of those. We should really be showing other stuff, but I thought these were fun. Oh, this is one that I wanted to show. So this one's the reactor. Basically, if I don't play anything, it's going to, hold on just a second. If I don't play anything, it's just going to make stuff up. But if I start playing a note, it's actually listening to it. This is a guitar art. And then if I stop playing, it'll just go back to, you know, random things that it puts there. But I'd like to still experiment with this. One of the utility tuners that I have in there is kind of a note trainer. That it throws out a note that you can play, and you've got to get it right. So there's still some things that we want to do to make this more fun and useful. I don't know if people ask about this tuner, but I don't know if they'll call it a gimmick either. But if anybody has watched the JHS pedal show on YouTube, they have a thing called record time, and that's what inspired me to make this one. And there are a few of their little quips that they like to say that are the labels in the record. So, and they randomly will change. So yeah, so if I close that and go back, that's the thing.
I think of happy days when I see that.
This is wild. I can't spoil them all. But yeah, that's what the record time tuner is. This attitude one is kind of mimicking like a airplane's attitude indicator. I got a friend in my band who's a pilot, and we always, when we're carpooling to a gig, we sometimes will chat about airplanes. So let's see.
Did you change the threshold in there?
Oh yeah, let me try that here.
It looks bigger than it was a few minutes ago.
So the threshold is basically what we're going to call in tune. And one is crazy. I don't like using that unless you've got an instrument that like super stable tuning. 6 gets a little bit much, but I'll show that. And it's easiest to see on the Biggie tuner. The Biggie tuner's triangles are basically the size of what's in tune. So if you see Let me switch this over to bypass mode, or monitoring mode. So as soon as it gets into the area of the triangle, that's in tune. But all of the tuners respect the in tune. So like if I switch now over to like the strobe, you'll see that the strobe changes color. The arcs will change color when you're in tune. But that's like 3 cents below and 3 cents above 0.
You're at plus or minus 3 now?
Yeah, if oh wait.
No, I think you're at 6.
That's at 6. Sorry, that's what I meant. So yeah, plus or minus 3 is kind of my preferred one.
Yeah, that seems to be a sweet spot. I think that's where I use it, is plus or minus 3.
Yeah, and that's the default. That's how we'll ship them. I think, is there anything else that I ought to show in here?
I think you've covered it. It's full featured. A lot of features.
Pretty straightforward. But well, how about we chat about a pre-order?
Okay.
Who wants to chat about that? You or me?
Go ahead.
Okay.
I'll back you up.
Well, the plan is that starting on Monday, June 2nd, on our website, we will have a pre-order links that you'll be able to purchase one of these kits. And initially, our plan is to. Have you checked the poll lately? We asked in a poll on Pedal PCB.
I'll check.
People who prefer 125B size, which is this size, or the smaller 1590B. Trying to get this pedal off the. Got it all taped down to my chair so it won't come off, but. So there'll be both of these sizes. I don't know if you can see that very well, but we'll have both of these as options on the website. We're only going to be selling 20 of them initially, and
it's
we'll
about
start.
50-50.
Say again.
It's still about 50-50. So.
Okay. Well, we'll make both offerings, and we're going to leave the pre-order open for about a week. So the plan right now is to go start on Monday. You can pre-order, and then it will end either if they all sell out, it will obviously end, or we'll go until next Monday. And we are using this information from the pre-order to know how many of each kind to order, and we will likely have them sooner than 45 days out from the pre-order or from the time of purchase. But legally, if you spend money, if you buy something from us, and we don't deliver in 45 days, then we'll offer the option to get a refund. Everybody has to legally do that, but we're hoping that probably by the end of June we should have kits that are being mailed out. So make sure if you've signed up for our mailing list, I'll be sending out an email, or we'll be sending out an email saying when the pre-order is live. It may not be, it'll be sometime Monday morning, I'm guessing. I'm not going to probably stay up till midnight and turn it on, but definitely watch for that. And if you've got any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Robert, is that his name, from Pedal PCB?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was kind enough to give us a space in the third-party area of Pedal PCB where we've started to talk about the project. So if you've got questions, hit us up there. Feel free to reach out there, or comment in this YouTube video. However you want to get a hold of us, we'll happily answer questions. So
you want to show them the website?
Oh yeah, it's building a website is not my forte. I'll just say that. How's that?
So, well, the website is not, done yet, but it's definitely started. So within the next couple weeks, we'll have build instructions and everything else kind of finished up. So we're really close. Should be starting to order production PCBs and enclosures in the next week or so.
Yeah. So, one thing I forgot to mention is if you come to this install screen, which I need to make it look a little nicer, that'll get there. But if I don't have one plugged in, you've got to be using Chrome as your browser to be able to do this. But once you plug in Qtune, it will show up here in this list as an ESP32, and you'll select that and be able to install any updates that we put out. And anytime we make an update, we'll announce it in the forum and in the email. And one page that's like the build instructions are coming soon. They're looking really good. They're in a PDF. They will be in a PDF. And if you've ever built one of the how do you say it? Ion effects?
Yeah, I don't know.
If you've ever built one of the Ion effects builds, or one of his kits, one of their kits, their documentation is pretty stellar. And I actually reached out to them and say, hey, do you mind if we're building this? Are you fine if we follow your same format? And they were happy to have us do that. So they set the bar high, and we'd love to hear your feedback once you get your kit, if it works well for you. So we'll be sure to post when this is available to everybody. There's a specs page. There's a bunch of frequently asked questions. I'm always really ambitious, and I think if you're willing to learn how to do something, you can do it. But Ryan tells me this is not a beginner build.
Probably not. I mean, I've built more complicated pedals, but this is not a beginner build.
There's one, the wire that connects the circuit board to the ESP32 is this special JST 1.0 millimeter, and there are 12 little pins, and they are not Ryan's friend.
I don't know if you can see that, the little connector there. It's probably not very useful, but they're 1 millimeters apart. So you got 12 pins and a half an inch, and that's just the way the ESP32 board that we're using comes. And it's not, you don't want to be rough with it. You need to be very cautious.
Yep. So this is your first warning that you're hearing from us, and there will also be a few warnings in the build PDF, but definitely take your time. Yeah, we are kind of taking the approach that Aeon Effects uses. We're not necessarily offering direct support for a kit because it's DIY. Definitely, we're obviously going to be paying attention to anybody who's building the pedal. And so if you hit snags or whatever, definitely reach out. But we're leaning on the DIY community, and especially probably once we get going, the pedal PCB forum will be a great place to ask, because if the two of us aren't available, we have day jobs, we're not available all the time, but there's likely somebody out there that can help out with things, especially if they've also built a kit before. So, oh, look at that. Our about screen is terrible. There we go.
What have you been doing lately, Boyd? I mean, come on.
No. You know what I'm going to miss? I was thinking about the other day is, because you're on Eastern time and I'm on Mountain time, literally like every morning I wake up and there's at least a message from you. So
yeah, same thing for me. When I get up, I get a message that you left the night before because I was already in bed.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. So this has been interesting, communicating with someone who's a couple hours different.
For sure. So. Well, I think that probably about does it. Just looking to see if we had anything else in our little notes, but I'm not seeing anything. We sure appreciate everybody who's tuned in tonight. Thanks for watching us, and help us spread the word. If we'd love to see you get one of our kits and build it up. Share a picture of it with us by tagging it with QTune pedal, hashtag QTune pedal. How do they do this stuff? I don't know. I'm not that hip. I spend most of my time down here in the basement coding on QTune. So, any other closing thoughts?
No, it's been a fun ride. I'm looking forward to the next chapter. Hopefully, we'll sell a few of these. I think I told you if we sell 10, I'll be thrilled. So,
yep.
If we sell 100, I'll be shocked. But
well, I know whoever gets one is going to get as high quality of what we can produce, and having a DIY tuner on your board. I mean, that pretty much is, except for my Ditto Plus and the power from one spot. Like everything else is going to be DIY. So
you need to make your own Ditto.
I'm working on something.
Okay.
That the fun box.
Oh, right.
Yeah. I think I've never played with the looping stuff in there, but I'm pretty sure it can be done. So. Well,
I'm really excited about this. This has been fun working with you, and I'm proud of what we've produced. I think it's a fantastic pedal. I'm a bit of a tuning snob. I know I've told you this before. I'm very picky with my tuners, and I prefer QTune. Try not to be biased, but I've had a turbo tuner or a Peterson or a Polytune for 15 years, and I don't think twice anymore. I grab the latest QTune and go, and it's fantastic. So I really like it. I hope you do too.
Yeah, I tried it for the first time in a couple of gigs this last weekend, and it was spot on. Did the job well. So, and it was nice. When I was using the HX Stomp, I would have to like press and hold the tuner button to get it to mute. And now with QTune, I just hit the button and it's muted. And when the other guy uses my guitar, it's really easy for him. I don't have to say, well, go hit any of those buttons. Just hit QTune. So I'm excited too. I'm excited to hear what people think about it and start seeing it be used on people's DIY boards, and it'll be fun.
Yep.
We'll make sure to we'll probably put a few more things out on this YouTube channel for QTune. If you're interested, definitely subscribe to it, and help us with the YouTube algorithms by giving us a like to this video, and share it with your friends. however you want to do it. And we'll probably put some of these old build photos on our Instagram feed as well. So Qtune pedal, I think, is what we have for that as well. But we hope you have a good evening, and thanks again for joining us.
Thanks a lot.
Now I've got to figure out how to stop the stream. It's been a while. Here we go. We can do this. Thanks, and we'll see you soon.
Still says on air.
You and I think, are live.